This is the Daily Divider Show, where we pick a story from each day and give you my take. 7 days, 7 divides. Let's get into it. On Monday, the government is overhauling earthquake strengthening rules, scrapping the current building standards in favour of a new risk-based system that will save owners $8.2 billion. Thousands of low-risk buildings will be taken off the earthquake-prone register, deadlines extended, and costly requirements like fire and stability upgrades removed. Ministers say the changes focus on genuine life-threatening risks. I'm not going to jump the gun and say that these are terrible changes, right? I don't have much to say on it, but I will say this. I think it remains to be seen that these are good changes. I think that there is consensus there that the current, or the previous now, system was one size fits all, and then you do have me as like Tory whānau in this article agreeing that this is much needed and much brought in. So it is important to dictate that there is an issue with the system. The only problem with me is that I don't exactly trust this government. I don't really trust the National Party really to do good policy. So but still, for me, it remains to be seen if this does work. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But removing disability ramps and other accesses isn't actually great. I am for, and I have said previously, I am for obviously reforming and maybe even not exactly getting rid of the RMA, but completely reforming the RMA to have better zoning laws and better to be able to build more housing and dwellings. But again, for me, it remains to be seen, because I don't trust this government, and I just know there's something there that's going to screw over the New Zealander. On Tuesday, Christopher Luxon's push for a 10-year bipartisan deal on offshore gas exploration has been slammed by Labour as a ham-fisted stunt, a desperate attempt to shift blame if new reserves don't materialise. While Luxon insists gas is essential for stability during the energy transition, Hipkins say it's a false solution that won't deliver affordable power. Meanwhile, unions agree the real fix isn't drilling for more fossil fuels, but taking electricity generation back into public hands, ending decades of privatisation that they say has failed workers and driven prices sky high. I couldn't agree with it more. It is insane to me that even we have a public-private partnership in something that is crucial in power, so integral as keeping these bloody lights on, is under a profit motive. That's absolutely insane. On the on that article that came out, I think it was a New Zealand Herald, I believe. I'm just going to scroll down. Yes, it was. It was a New Zealand Herald article that came out, and I was going to make a video on it because it is so much. Honestly, to me, it seems like that he's preparing to lose government next year and just blame it on Labour, or the party is going to blame it on Labour. That's probably an out of it conspiracy theory, really. But it just seems like that he's setting. He knows it's going to fail, and I think he does realise, and the government does realise that there's nothing there. We're empty. We're sucked dry. I mean, there's probably some, but not cost effective, but not enough to be cost effective and actually turn this country's energy crisis around. I do genuinely like to be optimistic. Funnily enough, I do like to be optimistic in things, especially when it comes to politics. But the National Party specifically, not even the ACT Party or New Zealand First, specifically the National Party, really makes it hard to be an optimistic person, because they sit there and they stand on their pedestal talking about bipartisan deals and holding hands, singing together, and let's get this country back on track, and why can't you get on board? We need to get on board and just sail this country to the future. When every single time Labour has tried to work with and to put policy proposals forward, especially when it came to the RMA, Nationals didn't seem to be willing to work with that. It's a very one-sided and manipulative, abusive relationship that the National Party wants with the Labour Party and this country, really. There's no bipartisanship. I don't know that my conspiracy theory is true. unless it's something that has been, unless this 4D chess is being played, and they're just trying to blame the whole National Party will blame the Labour Party when they get back into government next year, and then they ban more offshore gas and oil exploration, and they'll blame that. I don't know if this is a preemptive strategy. It probably is, because according to every expert, there's just nothing there. Well, every expert that isn't bought by big money. I think on renationalisation, it's not the be all and end all. Of course, I've stated that last week. I think that there are some policy elements and some tweaks that you could do in the short term while you progressively buy back over 5, 10, maybe even 3-year period, buy back shares in Mercury and the other gentailers. I don't think breaking them up is going to fix anything. I think that we need to centralise our infrastructure so we can best delegate the funds. We need to get this country back on track and make back that billions, hundreds of billions of infrastructure debt that we have made because of successive governments being half-assed, really, and that includes Labour. Really, there hasn't been a government since Muldoon that has really put through a proper plan of levelling up this country. And surprise, surprise, on Wednesday, the government's long-awaited response to the energy crisis promises new investment signals and even a gas import terminal by 2027, but stops short of bold reforms experts called for. Finance Minister Nicola Willis says the Crown will back big projects through its part-owned power companies, while Energy Minister Simon Watts insists gas and coal are still needed to keep the lights on. Critics, however, say it's a half-measure package that props up fossil fuels, ducks structural reforms, and leaves Kiwi households paying the price. Oh no, shocker. The announcement is that they will be making more announcements on more capital expenditure. So apart from the LNG terminal, the announcement is, well, we're open to giving money to companies that we own. Cool. I mean, that's the bare minimum. I mean, isn't this just like national touting that they're putting money into maintaining our current rail system and maintaining our defunct and decaying education infrastructure? It's the same thing, isn't it? Oh, we're willing to give money when it suits the taxpayer. Well, that's what your job is. That's your bloody job. What? There's nothing. What? These guys have nothing. I mean, I wasn't expecting renationalisation, but god damn, you could break them. Even Simon Bridges is going public and saying that this is not good enough. Simon Bridges. I don't think electorally. I think for Labour, campaigning on renationalising the energy sector isn't going to win them the election. But I think this does need to be. I mean, at the very least, you've got Craig Rennie, who's in the Labour Policy Council, that's outwardly as the economist for the CTU has supported it. So hopefully that does go somewhere in the party. When Labour, or hopefully when Labour gets into government next year, that goes somewhere. Because I'm not disappointed. When that came across in Wednesday, I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't surprised, really. But I would have expected something more. These guys, they keep falling short and just fumbling any win they can. But Palestine was the one in the year before, in the week before. They just keep fumbling easy wins to spin. This is not an easy one to spin. You could have done something a bit more and then span it, and it would have been better. On Thursday, a major rift has opened in Māori politics. Toitū Te Tiriti, once seen as Te Pāti Māori's closest ally, has cut ties, citing leadership failings, a dictatorship style, and the need for independence. Te Pāti Māori rejects the claims, calling them misleading, but the spirit highlights deep turbulence inside the party. Even Labour's Chris Hipkins is piling on, saying Te Pāti Māori is a long way from being ready for government. I'm not a big fan of the party. I'm not going to jump the gun and say that the party's going to tear itself apart. I think this is indicative. There is some shuffle, maybe some not a divide, but a big disagreement in the party and in the movement itself. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, the Maori party's just gonna rip apart, and they're gonna get below, they're not gonna win the Maori seats, and then I'm not gonna. No, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. I think that I mean, the Green Party is the biggest example of that. Any party can have a major amount of. This is child's play compared to the stuff that the Green Party have gone through and multiple other parties historically. For me, it's absolutely fine that, and it does make sense to get that you have a movement that wants to be more autonomous around different political and influence other political parties, including Te Pāti Māori, on that position, instead of attaching themselves to one minor party with respect, and not really have the same pull in the Labour Party or even in the Green Party, or arguably, if you have pull in the Māori Party, you're going to have pull in the Green Party. Whether or not you like that or not, that seems to be the case. This is a bit of a dud. What really has surprised me is the fact that he's so willing to go out and say that with the accusatory language, calling the leadership a dictatorship, or using a dictatorship style. It did shock me that Eru Kapa Kingi, I believe his name is, didn't go through the back channels and sort out those differences. And if that didn't happen, then either I don't he doesn't come off to me as a petty guy. So it mustn't be great if the party didn't allow. Look, I'm speculating here. If the party didn't allow Toitū Te Tiriti to have more autonomy to go out to these other parties, that might tell a lot to the reactionary nature of the Māori Party. I can't exactly articulate this well and to say that this won't tear apart the party or the movement. All it will do is either confirm people's preconceived and racist notions in the platform, Newstalk ZB, like talkback radio, that sphere, and on the other side, it won't change people's opinions of Te Pāti Māori. And it hasn't really changed my opinion. I've never really been for the party, but I've been really annoyed by their rhetoric and their nonsense at recent times. But it hasn't really shifted anything. All it does is just show that, you know, there's disagreement. There's disagreement in Māoridom, and that's fine. It's okay. It's normal. Te Pāti Māori does not control all of Māoridom. You know, I'm not Māori myself, and I can't and I won't speak for that, which is why I don't exactly speak when it came to Takati Ferris's crap. I didn't speak to the Māori electorate. I speak to the general role and the impact that it has. It might be fine when it came to Takati Ferris. It might be fine with the Māori role, but you know, vice versa. But I do know this. It's not that they're not a monolith, and I think this does show it at a more higher level. But it also shows it in Labour and all that, and that Labour learnt that hard way in the 2000s, obviously. So don't read much into it. Don't read much into it. Don't speculate. Don't conspiracize. Don't. And if you're on the left, don't go up in arms and say this is disgraceful. You should be. I just think that it's not really that big of a deal, and I'll level with you on that one. On Friday, voter turnout for this year's local election is surging, with more than 620,000 ballots already cast, nearly double the pace of 2022. Local Government New Zealand says rural areas are leading the charge, helped by an extra week of voting, more ballot boxes and public anger over rate rises in Māori wards. Officials say the momentum could push turnout beyond 40%, but warns there's still time for thousands more to make their voices heard before polls close on October 11th. I think it's really important. I think no one will say having low voter turnout, or having higher turnout in local elections is a bad thing across the board, I'm going to claim, unless it doesn't benefit you as a councillor specifically. if you're an unlikable twerp. So it is a good thing, and it's not really surprising that the Fair with Māori Wards rates. It does feel like this election could go two ways. You could see across the board councillors getting elected into positions, or councillors already elected into positions shifting their position. I don't know this for sure, so I'm kind of generalizing here. Shifting their position, or councillors getting into their position, and mayors deciding to get rid of rates, not getting rid of rates, capping rates. And then over time, you'll see the complete degradation and destruction of our local government and local infrastructure in the future. And obviously, when it comes to Māori wards, it's not surprising. What it is telling to me is that we can't seem as a country, we won't get past 50%. I think a part of that is also that we contract two private companies to deal with the local government electoral system. But the main one is that I just don't think people find local government really that interesting. Central government's very interesting, especially when you have two votes. You get two votes, you get to do two things. And you got parties, you got colours, they all flash in front of you. You got debates. It's flashy. We've got a decently high turnout. I believe it was 78% in the central government last election, which I wish it was 80. I'd rather be at 90%. It is really important to. I won't say much on this. It is really important to be involved in the system because local government is a part, and I don't hear enough people talk about it. I don't hear enough councillors talk about it. Local government is another hand of which the people can advocate for their position to central government. It's a very strong one. I mean, it's there in unions, in voting, obviously, in central government elections. But local government is a part of it. They can be an advocate to central government to make their case, and especially if it's unified in a regional area, there's a much more stronger case there. But I don't see enough people talk about it. So yeah, if you haven't voted, what are you doing with your life? Please vote. Vote. Do it now. Click off the video if you're still watching. Vote. Vote. Good. You gone? Good. And last but not least, on Saturday, New Zealand could soon be in the business of building and exporting lethal weapons. Defence Minister Judith Collins has unveiled a new defence industry strategy aimed at partnering with tech firms to develop high-tech military gear, both for the NZDF and for global export. Collins says that being battle-ready is vital for deterrence and argues lethal capability is necessary to keep the country safe. The plan includes a $300 million technology accelerator to fund military R&D and could lift defence spending above 2% of GDP within 8 years, a major shift towards a more militarised and export-driven defence economy. Believe it or not, I am not one of those hippies that believes that we should be getting rid of our military or cutting our military expenditure. Far from it, actually. I think we do actually need to increase the military expenditure. We can do that along with our other pro-worker policy. And when it comes to local, I have been a big supporter for moving away from our connection with the United States and moving away from acquiring equipment from the military industrial complex in the US and moving to being in lockstep with Australia, specifically when it comes to logistical capability and other plans, and Europe, mostly Australia. And when it comes to our own manufacturing industry, I'm not opposed to that. I do think that there are other investment opportunities much more worthy, and it seems a bit weird to me that the government is so gung-ho on this. Right, I do think that we need to be more self-sufficient in terms of acquiring weaponry, moving away from the United States, and I don't think that this government wants that or is willing to do that. But I do think a part of this does help, and I do think militarily we need to be more fitting like a glove into the Australian the ADF's capability, and we need to be acquiring equipment very similar, like the Bushmaster trucks, I'm not a military nerd, that were required a few five or so years ago. We need to be doing more like that. We need to be acquiring equipment that the ADF requires to be more in step, like what NATO does. For me, it kind of remains to be seen on what will come to this. The only thing that really weirds me out and interests me is that they're so gung-ho on acquiring the funds needed when it comes to the Defence Force, but they seem so laissez-faire and blasé and lazy when it comes to getting to paying teachers enough, and especially and even paying defence personnel. Even they don't really seem to be talking about that, or upgrading upgrading their accommodation, housing. Mold's growing, but little pennies compared to what the billions they want to spend on a brand new boom stick. But again, I'm not one of those hippies that just believes that we can just be the Switzerland of the South Pacific or whatever that bloody nonsense was. But again, I don't trust National. And I think what will happen is that they'll be a part of that article does talk about compatibility with Australia, which is what I'm for. I think it's going to involve a lot of finagling the nuts when it comes to the US military industrial MIC. But hey, I could be wrong. And last but not least, I do have a special mention when it comes to Palestine and the genocide there. And I wanted to speak a bit more on, because I don't think I really spoke enough on when it came to the decision. I think I felt myself rambling a bit. And so I want to really specify my opinion on it. My big issue, obviously, there is a moral abhorrence to it, but the main thing is that I genuinely thought they were going to do this. I thought they were going to do this. And the reason why I thought they were going to do this is because the current government is looking for a win. They are squeezing anything, and I've said that multiple times. They are squeezing any goodwill they can find in anything at all, to find something, some win, and they can't find it anywhere. They're going as far as to re-announcing an agreement that was made in the last government and calling it their own as a result of their deregulation, when that isn't the case. They are so bereft of any good news. It is insane. I can't imagine it was the same, even in the financial crisis, even after the financial crisis, and then under John Key in his first term. I cannot imagine. And of course, you had there was their own turning points in that decade when it came to the Foreshore and Seabed Act and Kim.com, which I believe was the 2000s, or it might have been the early 2010s. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. There's nothing. There's nothing. And so when this came around, and I thought, okay, they made the decision before. And Luxon talked about it's about when, not if. Okay, this is coming, and David Seymour's perking up and talking about God knows what. They were looking for a win. This was the easiest win. And what would come from that when they said that, look, we are going to recognize Palestine as a state? They wouldn't need to do anything else. They would need to, obviously. They wouldn't need to do a single thing. If they did more, that it'd be better. But they wouldn't need to do anything. The fact that they've done nothing at all. They've done not even the bare minimum. Recognizing Palestine as a state is the bare minimum. They did below minimum. They have fumbled the ball so fucking hard that I didn't even see it coming. It is such a strategic misstep. I cannot fathom to you how thick Luxon must be as a leader of this country to think that this will go down swimmingly in the future. Look, yes, 40% of the country is a plurality, but it's not half the country. I would go as to say maybe even half the country do believe in Palestinian state as opposed to the other side? Sure. But I'm willing to bet that there is a big sect of National Party voters that do also believe in Palestinian statehood, especially young voters. People seem to forget and seem to think that we are the same as every other country, especially when it comes to the United States or even Canada or even the UK. When we've got our neighbour right next to us who had an election this year where their opposition party and their Tory party and their Liberal party ran on right-wing policy and they lost. The Trumpist policy. And they lost. Where am I going with this? I don't know. I went on a ramble there. My point is that I just wanted to reinforce how much of a strategic fumble that was. And I still don't get why they didn't do it. They could have just done nothing else and that would have been fine. There would have been people talking about it and protesting, obviously. But they wouldn't have been paid as much attention. Winston wouldn't have been protesters outside of his house. And on that, I don't want to hear a single bloody thing from Winston or anybody else, for that matter, who are crying foul about how awful it was that a leader of our country he's being abused. His family's being abused. Oh, that's terrible. That's never happened before. I don't want to hear a fucking thing because you scumbags didn't say fucking shit under the last government. You didn't say shit because it wasn't your man. So whenever people talk about that political violence, fuck off. You scumbags have been sitting on the sidelines waiting for your opportunity since 2020. But yeah, major fuck up. And honestly, I'm starting to think that maybe that this government might not stay in. It just doesn't. It just seems that strategically, every single time, whoever their advisors are, they must be labor undercover labor agents. They must be, because god damn, they just there's nothing on them. No brain, just head empty, smooth brain. They don't seem to get it. And you love to see it. You do actually love to see it. You do love to see it.